The jungle moon of Varela 7 was full of strange sounds. Birds with glassy wings flew above the trees and vines glowed softly in the shade. It looked beautiful, but it was dangerous. Very dangerous. Lieutenant Jonah Reyes, a human soldier, and escort officer stood at the edge of the wrecked shuttle holding his blaster tight. Smoke rose from the crash site and parts of the ship still sparked. The communication system was dead. Help wasn't coming soon. Behind him, a small group of aliens huddled together. They were part of a diplomatic team, peaceful visitors from different star systems. One of them stood out. A quiet girl with pale skin and silver eyes wrapped in soft flowing clothes. She looked almost like glass, delicate, fragile, and easily broken. Her name was Elani, and she came from the planet Serenia. Jonah had met many aliens during his time in space, but none like her. She barely spoke. She didn't eat much. She flinched at every loud sound. And now, stuck on a deadly moon, she looked like the first one who might not survive. "Stay close to me," Jonah told her. Elani nodded slowly, her long white hair moving with the wind. She didn't say a word. They had to move. Varela 7 was not just a wild place. Strange creatures lived here, and some were known to attack without warning. Jonah's mission had changed. It wasn't about escorting the diplomats anymore. It was about keeping them alive. He took point and led the group through the thick jungle. The leaves were as big as shields, and every step felt like walking through a dream or a nightmare. The sun above them burned red, and the air was heavy with fog and moisture. "Lieutenant," whispered one of the other diplomats, "how far is the signal station?" "About 12 kilometers southeast," Jonah replied. "If we're lucky, we can reach it in 2 days." "If we're not lucky," the diplomat asked, "then we don't reach it at all." The group walked in silence. Strange calls echoed through the trees. Something moved in the shadows, fast and quiet. Jonah scanned the area with his visor. Nothing yet. But they were not alone. Suddenly a loud growl came from the trees. A blur of dark fur rushed out. A Varellan stalk beast, 6-legged, with claws like daggers, charged toward them. Jonah reacted fast, pulling his blaster and firing. The shot hit the beast in the shoulder, but it kept coming. "Down!" Jonah shouted, placing himself between the creature and the group. The stalk beast leaped. Jonah fired again. This time the blast hit its chest, and the creature fell with a thud, sliding in the dirt. Jonah stayed still, ready in case there were more. Elani stared at the dead creature. Her eyes were wide, but not with fear. Something else. Something Jonah didn't understand. "You okay?" he asked her. She looked at him and nodded, then lowered her eyes again, quiet as always. They moved on. That night they camped near a rock wall, setting up a small energy shield to keep creatures out. Jonah sat near the edge, watching the jungle with his rifle in his lap. Elani sat alone, a few meters away, her arms wrapped around her knees. Jonah sighed and walked over to her. "You need food?" he asked. She shook her head. "You need rest." Again, she didn't answer. Jonah sat down beside her. "I've seen fear before," he said. "But you're something else. You're calm. Too calm." "I am not calm," she said softly. It was the first time she had spoken more than one word to him. Her voice was light, almost like music. "Could have fooled me," Jonah said. "Back there with the stalk beast, you didn't scream, you didn't run." Elani looked up at the sky. The stars above shimmered. "I was trained not to scream, not to run." Jonah raised an eyebrow. "Trained? Your people are known for peace, not fighting." She was silent for a long moment, then she said, "That is true. We believe in peace. But peace must be guarded. My role is quiet, hidden." Before Jonah could ask more, a strange sound came from the forest. A low whistle, not natural, not from an animal. He stood up quickly, holding his blaster. "Get ready," he called to the group. "We've got company." From the shadows, shapes began to appear. Humanoids, dressed in armor, holding energy blades and rifles. Raiders. They weren't here for a rescue. They were here to take prisoners. Or, worse, behind me, Jonah ordered. The aliens moved into cover. Ailani stayed in place, still sitting. Ailani, move. Jonah shouted, but she didn't move. Instead, she slowly stood up. The lead raider laughed. That one's barely standing. We'll take her first. He stepped forward, and then something happened. Jonah would never forget. Ailani moved, not like a soldier, not like a human. She floated forward, swift and graceful, like wind flowing through silk. Her hands moved in slow circles, then suddenly snapped forward, fast and sharp. The raider raised his weapon, but before he could pull the trigger, Ailani was already past him. The weapon fell in 2 pieces. The raider dropped to his knees, stunned, unharmed, but completely defeated. Ailani turned to the others. Her body was relaxed, her eyes glowing faintly. In the next moment, she spun through the air, landing between 2 attackers and knocking both to the ground with silent, exact strikes. Jonah could only stare. She wasn't just fighting. She was dancing. Every movement calculated, perfect, beautiful. The raiders tried to surround her, but she flowed like water between them. Disarming, disabling, never killing, but always winning. In under a minute, it was over. The raiders were either unconscious or crawling away. Ailani stood in the middle, untouched, calm. Jonah stepped forward, speechless. Ailani turned to him and gave a soft nod. I thought you were just a diplomat, Jonah finally said. I am, she replied. But sometimes, peace must be defended. The early morning mist covered the jungle of Virella 7 like a blanket. Every tree looked like a shadow, and every sound felt closer than it really was. Lieutenant Jonah Reyes moved slowly through the thick fog, blaster ready in his hand. Behind him, the group of diplomats followed in silence. Each step they took made a soft crunch on the jungle floor. The night had passed without more attacks, but Jonah knew they weren't safe. The raiders were still out there, and now they knew Ailani wasn't helpless. He looked back at her. She walked calmly, her silver eyes scanning the trees. She was still quiet, still soft in voice and movement. But after what she did last night, Jonah could no longer see her the same way. The fragile alien girl was something far more dangerous than she looked. How far now? One of the diplomats asked. 10 kilometers, Jonah answered. We reach the old signal station, get a message out, and hope command picks it up. Do you think they'll come? Ailani asked gently. If they hear us, they will. Ailani nodded, her expression calm as always. But Jonah noticed her hand stay near the long ribbon wrapped around her wrist. She had used that ribbon like a blade during the fight. He didn't know how it worked. All he knew was, she did things no human could. They reached a narrow canyon around midday. The fog grew thicker here, curling between high stone walls. Jonah didn't like it. This place is a trap, he muttered. We don't have another way, said one of the diplomats. The map says this is the only path to the station. Jonah sighed. Then we stay alert, eyes open, heads down. Keep moving. They entered the canyon. The walls were steep and close together. Water dripped from the rocks. The air felt heavy. Jonah's instincts screamed danger. He didn't hear birds anymore. Even the wind had stopped. Halfway through the canyon, he saw it, a small flicker of movement above. Then another. Too late. Blaster fire rained down from the cliffs. Red bolts sizzled through the air. Jonah pushed the group down behind a large rock. Ambush, he shouted. Stay down. Raiders appeared on both sides, firing from cover. A few dropped down, landing hard on the canyon floor. They were more aggressive than before, angrier, faster. They had come prepared. Jonah fired back, hitting 2 raiders in the chest. We need cover, he yelled. Fall back. But there was no way back. Raiders had already circled behind them. We're surrounded, one diplomat cried. Jonah turned to Ailani. She was standing again, her ribbon unwinding from her wrist like a silver snake. I will help, she said quietly. Jonah hesitated. You sure? There's a lot of them. Ailani didn't answer. She stepped forward, her hands moving in circles again. A raider charged at her, swinging a heavy blade. Ailani ducked, spun, and flicked her ribbon. It wrapped around the raider's arm and pulled. The weapon flew from his hand. One smooth kick sent him to the ground. Another came behind her, but she was already turning. Her ribbon snapped like a whip, striking his weapon away. She moved like she could see the future, each motion fast yet controlled. Jonah jumped from cover, inspired. He fired carefully, hitting 2 more attackers. One of the diplomats used a broken metal rod to defend himself. The rest just stayed low, terrified. Suddenly, Jonah heard a loud thump. A larger figure dropped into the canyon. It wore heavy armor and a red visor. The others fell silent. The leader had arrived. The raider captain pointed at Ailani. You're the one." Ailani stopped moving. "You should leave," she said. "This is your last warning." The captain laughed. "You think I fear a Serenian girl?" He pulled a long plasma staff from his back. With a burst of energy, it lit up with blue fire. Ailani didn't move. Jonah tried to help, but 3 raiders cut him off. He had to fight them alone. The captain ran at Ailani with the staff raised high. Ailani waited. Then just before the strike landed, she stepped sideways, barely an inch. The staff missed. She turned, her ribbon flashing. It hit the captain's hand. His weapon fell. Before he could react, she flipped backward and landed on a rock above him. With a wave of her arm, the ribbon wrapped around his legs and pulled. He crashed down hard, but he wasn't finished. He roared and jumped up, swinging wildly. Ailani dodged again and again, her face calm. Her ribbon struck his knee, then his shoulder, then his visor. Sparks flew. Finally, she leapt forward, spinning in the air, and kicked him in the chest. He flew back and hit the canyon wall. Silence. The other raiders froze. The captain groaned and fell still. Ailani stood over him, breathing softly. "Let us pass," she said, "or the next time I won't be so gentle." The raiders backed away slowly, picking up their wounded. No one dared to fight her again. One by one, they disappeared into the fog. Jonah walked over, his uniform dirty, his face covered in sweat. "That was incredible," he said. "You took out their leader." "I do not enjoy violence," Ailani replied. "But I will protect what must be protected." Jonah looked at the others. They were safe, because of her. "You saved us again," he said. Ailani lowered her eyes. "You helped too." He smiled. "Yeah, but I don't dance when I fight." A small smile touched her lips. The first he had seen. They moved on, deeper into the jungle. The canyon was behind them. The fog began to clear. Above, the red sun was starting to fall. Jonah looked up. "We'll reach the station by morning if we keep going." Ailani nodded. "Good. We must send the message." Jonah glanced at her once more. She still looked soft, quiet, and gentle, but now he knew better. She was a blade hidden in silk, and he was glad she was on their side. The jungle opened up just as the sun began to rise. Red light spilled over the trees, and the air was still and quiet. Lieutenant Jonah Reyes stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at the broken remains of an old outpost. "We're here," he said. "This must be it." The signal station was barely standing. The roof had collapsed and vines had taken over most of the walls. A few satellite dishes were still visible, tilted and rusted, but the structure looked like it could still hide something important. "This place is from before the war," Jonah said, stepping forward. "I didn't expect it to still be standing." "It's not just a signal station," Ailani said softly. Her eyes moved across the old building with care, almost with sadness. Jonah turned to her. "You know this place?" Ailani walked closer and touched one of the walls. "This was a Serenian watchpost long ago before we became diplomats." Jonah raised an eyebrow. "Watchpost? I thought your people never had soldiers." "That's what the galaxy believes," Ailani replied. "But there is more to our story." They entered the building carefully. Dust and broken glass covered the floor. Old screens were dark. Jonah checked the power core. Surprisingly, a small amount of energy remained. He turned it on. A low hum filled the room. One of the screens flickered to life. "We might be able to send a signal," he said. "Give me a few minutes." While Jonah worked, Ailani walked deeper into the building. She found a sealed door covered in moss. She placed her hand on it. The door glowed faintly. A moment later it opened with a soft hiss. Behind the door was a round chamber. In the center floated a glowing orb. The Chiron Codex. Ailani stepped inside. Her face turned serious. Jonah arrived just behind her. "What is that?" Ailani looked at him. "This is what the raiders are after." The orb pulsed with blue and white light. Symbols floated around it, shifting gently in the air. "It's beautiful," Jonah whispered. "And dangerous," Ailani said. "This is a Serenian relic. It holds knowledge and technology from our ancient past. Long ago it was used to control energy systems, even disable ships or cities. That is why we hid it." Jonah frowned. "Then why leave it here?" "It was safe. Forgotten. Guarded by silence. But now someone has remembered. The raiders must have found traces of it, or someone told them." Jonah nodded slowly. "So this is more than just a rescue. If they get this codex, they could take over systems, maybe start a war." "Yes," Ailani said. "That is why I must protect it, no matter the cost." Jonah looked at her carefully. "You were trained for this, weren't you?" She nodded. "I am a core guardian, one of the last. My training began as a child. My teachers told me to keep peace, but also how to stop those who break it." Jonah leaned against the wall. "Funny. You look like a peaceful girl, but you fight like a storm." Ailani looked at the codex. "That is the Serenian way. Hidden strength, silent fire." He smiled. "I like that." A sudden sound broke the silence. A low rumble. Jonah grabbed his blaster. "That's not good." Outside, voices echoed through the jungle. Footsteps. The sound of metal boots on stone. "They're here," he said. "They followed us." Ailani stepped away from the codex. "We can't let them take it." Jonah nodded. "We hold them here, make our stand." They moved fast. Jonah found good cover points around the broken walls. He handed a small blaster to one of the diplomats who had followed them in. "Stay low. Only fire if they get close." Ailani returned to the chamber. She placed her hand on the codex. The orb dimmed slightly, then sank into a hidden slot in the floor. Metal plates closed over it. "It is sealed," she said as she rejoined Jonah. "Only I can open it now." Jonah grinned. "That's good, because I don't plan on letting them in." Moments later, the raiders arrived. Dozens of them, more than before, and this time they had brought heavier weapons. The new leader stepped forward, taller, covered, in dark armor, with a long energy sword on his back. His voice echoed through a speaker in his helmet. "Give us the girl and the artifact. No one else needs to die." Jonah stepped up. "You'll have to go through me first." The leader didn't wait. He gave the signal. Blaster fire began at once. The outpost shook as explosions hit the outer walls. Jonah fired carefully, hitting 2 raiders who tried to rush in. He moved between cover, keeping his people safe. Ailani stepped into the open. The raiders laughed. Then she moved. A flash of silver. A streak of white. Her ribbon spun through the air, cutting weapons, knocking down enemies, moving faster than the eye could follow. The battle became chaos. Jonah saw her leap over a wall, twist in midair, and land between 3 raiders. A quick movement, and they were all on the ground. She was light on her feet. Every motion was a part of something bigger. She never paused, never wasted energy. She fought like she was born to. Jonah covered her from a distance, firing at those she didn't see. Together, they became a perfect team. Grace and power, discipline and speed. But then, the dark-armored leader entered the outpost. He moved with skill, not like the others. His blade glowed as he came straight for Ailani. She met him without fear. They clashed in the center of the broken station. Ribbon versus sword, speed versus strength. Jonah wanted to help, but he had his hands full with other raiders. The fight between Ailani and the leader shook the ground. He was strong, but she was faster. He struck with heavy blows. but she moved with precision. For every strike he made, she found a way to deflect or avoid. Then finally she saw her chance: a step, a twist, a strike to his leg. The leader fell to one knee. Elani's ribbon wrapped around his sword and pulled it away. He reached for a hidden weapon, but she was already there. A soft touch to his neck. A sudden spark. He collapsed, stunned. The other raiders saw their leader fall, and they ran. Silence returned to the jungle. Jonah walked to her side. "You did it." "We did it," Elani said. He looked at the sealed chamber. "What will we do with the codex?" "We will take it to a safer place," she said. "One where no one can find it again." Jonah nodded. "Then let's send that signal and go home." The sun dipped low over the jungle of Varela 7, casting long shadows across the trees. The air smelled of smoke, metal, and something ancient, like time itself had stopped for a moment. The battle was over for now. The broken signal station stood like a silent witness to what had happened inside its walls. Lieutenant Jonah Reyes leaned against a cracked pillar, his face streaked with dust and sweat. He had fought many battles before, but this one felt different, not just because of the danger, but because of who stood beside him. Elani, the fragile-looking Serenian girl, moved gracefully through the remains of the outpost, checking for wounded. Her soft white robe was stained with dirt and ash, but she still moved like a gentle wind, quiet, calm, and powerful. Jonah watched her, still amazed. She had fought like a storm, like a dancer of light and shadow. And yet now, she looked as gentle as ever. "How are the others?" Jonah asked. "They are safe," Elani replied. "A few have minor wounds, but they will heal." Jonah nodded. "Good. We need to rest. They'll come again." Elani looked up. "Yes, they won't stop. Not until the codex is out of their reach." The Chiron Codex, sealed deep below the station, was now hidden from the raiders. But that wouldn't stop them. Word would spread. Others would come. Jonah sat down on a rock and wiped his forehead. "We need a plan." Elani sat beside him, folding her legs neatly. "We fight together." Jonah looked at her. "I'm not a Serenian. I don't have your skills." She smiled gently. "And I don't have yours. But together we are stronger." He gave a tired laugh. "So what are we? Fire and grace?" She tilted her head. "You are fire, yes. But not wild. You burn for those. You protect." He nodded. "And your grace, but with sharp edges." A soft breeze passed between them. For a while they sat in silence. As night fell, Jonah gathered the group into the central room of the station. He stood near the remains of an old map table and spread out a piece of cloth with a hand-drawn layout. "We need to fortify this place," he said. "They'll come in greater numbers next time." The diplomats looked worried. They were not fighters. "I can help," said one, a tall being with glowing eyes. "I studied defense systems in my training." Jonah smiled. "Then you're now head of traps and sensors." A few others stepped forward. Some had basic combat skills. Others could carry supplies, patch wounds, or build barricades. "We'll make this place into a stronghold," Jonah said. "Even if they come with an army, we'll be ready." Elani placed her hand on the floor. "I can teach some basic defense techniques, movements to redirect energy, disarm attackers." "You'll train them?" Jonah asked. She nodded. "It is time we all learn to stand." Over the next 2 days, the station came alive with activity. The group worked as one, building, training, preparing. Jonah oversaw the defense zones, placing hidden charges and makeshift shields. He taught the team how to shoot, move, and survive. Elani led quiet training sessions in the evenings. She taught them how to move their bodies with balance, how to breathe through fear, and how to stay calm in chaos. Her lessons were not loud. She didn't shout like a drill sergeant. She simply moved, and they followed. Even Jonah joined one of her sessions. He found her movement strange at first, too smooth, too slow. But as he practiced, he felt his own steps become lighter, his focus sharper. "You fight with strength," Elani told him one night. "But if you add stillness to it, your fire will not burn out too fast." He smiled. "You're full of wisdom." She gave a soft smile back. Serenians believe the strongest warriors speak little and move less. But when they move, it matters. On the third day, the warning alarms went off. Jonah and Elani rushed to the outer wall. In the distance, they saw ships descending. 3, maybe 4, bigger than before, more organized. "They brought a war band," Jonah said. "They're serious now." Elani's eyes narrowed. "Then we must be serious too." Jonah turned to the group. "Positions. Everyone knows what to do." The diplomats moved quickly to their assigned spots. Some manned the old turrets they had repaired. Others hid behind barriers, ready with weapons. Jonah climbed to the high platform with a rifle in hand. Elani stood below, ribbon already floating beside her like a spirit. The raiders came. Blasters lit up the sky. Explosions shook the ground. The battle had begun. Jonah picked targets carefully, taking out raiders before they got too close. The others held the lines using every trick they had learned. Some traps worked perfectly: net launchers, gas bombs, flash charges. The raiders were slowed, confused. Then the main force reached the gate. A large mech unit smashed through the front, barrier clearing a path. Jonah shouted, "Fall back to second defense point." The group moved fast. Elani remained near the front, eyes focused. As the mech entered the station, she moved toward it, alone. "Wait!" Jonah shouted, but she was already in motion. The mech fired a blast of plasma. Elani jumped. She twisted, in the air, avoiding the blast. Her ribbon wrapped around the mech's arm. With a sudden pull, she flipped onto its back. She touched a hidden panel. Jonah saw it spark. The mech stopped. Elani dropped to the ground as it exploded behind her in a cloud of smoke. Jonah stared. How does she do that? The fight continued. Jonah and the others gave everything they had. The battle lasted for hours. But in the end, the raiders pulled back. They had lost again. After the battle, the survivors stood together in the quiet of the station. "We did it," one diplomat whispered. "We held them." Jonah leaned on his blaster. "For now, they'll think twice before coming back." Elani stood on the broken steps of the old signal tower. Her white robe fluttered in the breeze. "You all fought bravely," she said. "This alliance, this unity, was our strength." Jonah stepped beside her. "Fire and grace," he said with a grin. She looked at him. "And something more." "What's that?" "Hope." Jonah nodded. "Then let's send one last message." They activated the signal beacon again. This time it reached out far, past the jungle moon, past the nearby planets. It carried one simple message. "The Codex is safe. The Guardians stand. Do not fear." The stars above Virella 7 shone brighter now, as if watching silently after the storm. The jungle was quiet. The wind was gentle. The battle was over. Lieutenant Jonah Reyes stood at the top of the old signal tower, looking out over the rebuilt walls of the outpost. What had once been a broken ruin was now something else, a symbol of strength, of unity, and of something he hadn't expected to find out here: hope. Behind him, diplomats and volunteers cleaned the ground, repaired the damage, and shared stories of what had happened. Not just about the fight, but about Elani, the girl no one had expected. Jonah turned when he heard soft footsteps. Elani stood there, dressed in a clean white robe. Her silver eyes looked peaceful, but her presence still carried power. Everyone had seen it now. Everyone knew. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Jonah asked gently. Elani nodded. "The council has called for me. They received our signal. They want to speak about the Codex, about what happened here." Jonah looked down at the jungle. "You think they'll believe us?" "They must," she said. "The Codex cannot stay here. It must be protected by more than just silence now." Jonah looked at her, his voice low. I'll miss fighting beside you. Elani smiled, soft and warm. You will not be far. I asked them to place you on the escort team. Jonah blinked. You did? Yes, she replied. You fight with fire, but your fire gives light, not just heat. I want the council to see what I saw. He gave a small laugh. I didn't think I'd ever impress a Serenian. You didn't impress me, Elani said, tilting her head. You stood with me. That is stronger than any skill. 3 weeks later, on the capital station of the Galactic Council, the chamber buzzed with voices. Leaders from dozens of planets sat in their high chairs, listening, watching. Screens showed news of the battle on Varela 7, images of Jonah, of the raiders, of Elani flying through the air with her ribbon like a silver flame. Elani stood calmly in the center of the Great Hall, facing the entire galaxy's eyes. Behind her stood Jonah, his uniform cleaned, his medals shining, but his heart still humble. A deep voice echoed across the chamber. You are Elani of Serenia, trained in the old way. A guardian. Why did you reveal your powers now after all these years of silence? Elani bowed her head slightly. Because silence no longer protects. Shadows have learned to listen. The voice continued, curious. You disobeyed your orders. You engaged in combat. You risked exposing ancient secrets. I saved lives, she replied. I defended peace. That is what I was trained to do. Another counselor from a warrior race stood. And the human? He is not Serenian. Why is he here? Jonah stepped forward. Because I was there, he said simply. Because I saw what she did, and I saw who she is. The room grew quiet. He continued. You look at her and see a fragile girl. I did too. But she is more than that. She's a force. And not just because of how she fights, but because she chooses when to fight. He pointed to the screen showing Elani disarming the raider leader. She could have destroyed them. But she didn't. She gave them a chance to walk away. That's not weakness, that's strength. Murmurs filled the room. The Serenian representative stood. And what of the Codex? Elani answered. It is safe. Sealed again. But I will not lie. Others will come for it. We must not hide anymore. The Guardians must return. Not as secret weapons, but as protectors. The council fell silent again. Then one voice said softly, She speaks with balance. Let her lead. Another joined in. Let the Serenians protect what is old, and let the humans stand beside them. And one by one, heads nodded. Weeks later, the official decision was made. Elani was named High Guardian of the Serenian Corps, a title not used in centuries. Her job was to lead the return of the Guardians, carefully, wisely, in peace. Jonah was, given the rank of Alliance Liaison Commander, a bridge between human strength and Serenian knowledge. Not a politician, not a hero, just someone who had seen the truth and stood by it. Together, they traveled from system to system, meeting leaders, training new protectors and spreading a message that had been forgotten. True strength is not in power alone. True strength is in knowing when to use it and when not to. On one quiet evening aboard a peace ship orbiting a green moon, Jonah and Elani stood side by side on a viewing deck. Below them, the planet spun slowly, full of life and light. You? No, Jonah said. When I first saw you, I thought I'd be protecting you the whole time. Elani looked at him, her silver eyes soft. And now? I think. He smiled. You were protecting all of us. Elani looked out the window. I was only doing what I was trained to do. But no one expected it, he said. You shocked everyone. She turned her gaze back to the stars. That was never my goal. I just wanted peace. And you earned it, he said. They stood there for a long time, silent as stars drifted past the glass. Back on Varela 7, the old outpost had been turned into a monument. A statue stood at the entrance, Elani in mid-motion, ribbon flying behind her, and Jonah by her side, blaster in hand. The plaque read, "Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers before it roars." Tourists came. Children listened to stories. Young guardians trained under the name of Elani. And whenever a fight was brewing in any part of the galaxy, a message was sent. Call the fire and grace. They will come.